first community forum of 2026. We will now review the process for closed captioning. For those joining us on Zoom, closed captioning is available for this meeting. The closed captions can be displayed in English or another language, which will allow you to view an automated live transcript of the meeting in another language. To display closed captions on your screen, please do the following. Click the button labeled Show Captions at the bottom of your Zoom window. Select the box at the bottom of the window labeled Enable Translation. When you see you've enabled translation at the top, select English as a speaking language and select your preferred language in the second menu. Click Save. Automated captions in your selected language should start appearing at the bottom of the Zoom window. CRD staff will insert some information in Spanish. I know that earlier there was a land acknowledgement that was done, but I always like to start my community forums with a land acknowledgement. So Sekasen, and good afternoon. My name is Regina Cuellar. I'm the chairwoman of the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. It is an honor to offer this land acknowledgement on behalf of the Commission on the State of Haight. We gather today on the unceded ancestral homelands of the Ohlone peoples. Let us honor them by acknowledging, remembering, and elevating their rich cultures, traditions, and histories, and the luminous futures of their communities. They have called this place home since time immemorial, and they are present in this space today and continue to be the original guardians and caretakers of this land. As we come together with the responsibility of strengthening California's efforts to stop hate and promote mutual respect among California's diverse populations, let us do so with the utmost reverence and with the best of intentions in a way that pays tribute to the Ohlone peoples, their ancestors, elders, and descendants. Thank you. The title of today's forum is Combating Hate, Recommendations from the California Commission on the State of Hate. The Commission on the State of Hate was established to strengthen California's efforts to combat hate. Today, we plan to tell you more about the Commission and the key resources we've developed to help advocates, community organizations, and policymakers. These resources include a training for law enforcement officers, data on hate in California, guidance on evidence-based prevention to hate, recommendations for improving California's anti-hate efforts, and all of the information we share today is in our annual reports on our website. You can also contact us, and we are happy to provide assistance with the resources presented today at csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. I will now introduce all of the commissioners that are here with us today. First, we have Commissioner Russell Roybal, who will share remarks later today. Next, we have Chair Brian Levin. Next, Commissioner Bambi Salcedo. Then we have Commissioner Errol Southers, Commissioner Eshan Zafar, and we have Commissioner Andrea Beth Damsky joining us virtually on Zoom. I will now discuss the process for public comment. We will leave 15 minutes at the end for public comments throughout the meeting today. To keep an orderly meeting, please make sure to comment only on the agenda item under consideration. If you have comments that are not specifically related to an agenda item, please save your comment for the agenda item titled Public Comment on Items Not on the Agenda. As you consider your comments today, we want to encourage you to keep a few things in mind. Everyone is encouraged to participate. The foundation of our work is community input, and we want to encourage you to speak up and have your voice heard. We appreciate the diversity of perspectives. This forum was designed to support learning together and the creation of shared understanding. Everyone brings kernels of wisdom based on their own unique history and experiences. We cannot know or understand what someone else thinks unless we listen to them. Therefore, when someone says something that challenges your thinking, we encourage you to listen, to understand why they think as they do. Maintain a respectful space. Everyone is deserving of respect. That means I encourage everyone to treat each other with kindness and respect today, even if we might disagree. In addition, we want to acknowledge the knowledge and experience of those in the room with us today. We welcome your comments and feedback for us during the public comment section at the end of the presentation. I will now turn it over to Commissioner Roybal, who will share some more about the Commission.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Cuellar. As Commissioner Cuellar mentioned, our mission is to strengthen California's efforts to monitor, prevent, and respond to hate activity, as well as support those targeted by hate through community-informed research, education, and advisement. In our mission statement are 3 key goals that guide our work. Monitor hate. Each year, we provide a summary of key patterns and trends of hate impacting Californians. That we strengthen responses to hate. Each year, we also issue recommendations for strengthening California's response to hate, including the resource and support systems. And then finally, prevent hate. Each year, we issue guidance on approaches to hate prevention. So you may be asking yourself, how do we approach each of these 3 goals? All of our guidance and recommendations are built on a foundation of research and data and community input. We talk to subject matter experts around the world on hate. We are staffed with a team of social scientists, brilliant social scientists who you will hear from in a little bit. And we partnered with UCLA to collect one of the most comprehensive data sets on hate in California to date, which Adrian will talk about later. We also strive to get as much community input as possible. We are a public body. And as a public body, public input is essential to our work. We travel around the state to learn from communities, and we are continuously consulting community-based organizations. We know that California's efforts to stop hate needs to be informed by the wisdom and expertise of the communities of California. We've issued 3 public reports to date, which contain all of our findings and recommendations. Today, our commission staff will highlight a few resources in addition to our report that might be helpful for your work in your own communities. All of the information presented today is in our annual reports, which, as Commissioner Cuellar said, is available on our website. If you just put into any search engine, the California Commission on the State of Hate, our website will pop up. We will start by discussing some of our findings related to law enforcement responses to hate. We partnered with the state agency responsible for creating law enforcement trainings, POST, to create 15-minute training for officers. Dr. Goodsell will tell us more about that. We've also partnered with UCLA to collect an incredible data set on hate that anyone can go online and analyze. Dr. Bakong will walk us through that. And then we've also provided evidence-based guidance on preventing hate, which Dr. Thomas will present. Throughout the presentation today, we will highlight just a small sample of recommendations that we have issued for policymakers. We've issued 42 recommendations so far. All of the recommendations and supporting evidence are in our reports and are based on the data that we've collected. We encourage you to contact us as well to discuss any of the resources that we present today. You can reach us by emailing the commission at csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. And with that, but before I turn it over to the staff, I just want to say that it is very important that one of the things that the commission has done since its inception, it's not that old, it's only four years old, it has looked at where there are gaps in the data. And so the staff will be talking about that. We've already made some incredible changes to the way some of that data is collected, which the staff will also talk about in their reports. So we are trying to use a very data-based approach to preventing hate in our state. And with that, I will turn it over to our brilliant colleagues at the commission, and we'll start with Dr. Rebecca Goodsell.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. So we know from our work that one of the avenues to respond to hate is through law enforcement. And it's really crucial for law enforcement officers to be prepared. As Director Kish talked about earlier, it's important that when people do reach out to government, to law enforcement, that they receive the help that they need and resources. And so the commission itself is required to provide resources and recommendation to law enforcement to respond to and reduce acts of hate. And so as part of this task, we've investigated gaps in law enforcement responses to hate, including training requirements, and worked with POST to improve trainings. They're the ones that design the trainings for all law enforcement officers across the state. And so we know from the research that people may not report to law enforcement for a variety of reasons. We've listed some here, including distrust in law enforcement, inadequate accommodations for people, including those with disabilities and those for whom English is not their first language. And for some, the experience of hate also may be so normalized that they may not think of it's a big enough deal to report it. And we also know from the research that law enforcement may not take down reports of hate or thoroughly investigate hate crimes because of a variety of factors, including insufficient resources, insufficient training, and insufficient policies. And as part of our work, we worked with the California Health Interview Survey, which Adrian will speak about a little bit later. But in addition to the survey, we talked to 53 folks across California and heard some details about their experiences with hate. And in this quote, we see that this respondent felt that their race was a barrier to seeking help from law enforcement. They said, "I do feel like sometimes I can't seek help just because of my race from authorities. And if they were more comfortable, they would have reported it." In this case, it sounds like California versus Hate may have been a good resource for this individual, as they said that they would have sought help if they could have reported anonymously. And they could also reach out to community organizations, such as those represented at this event, or Community Conflict Resolution Unit at the Civil Rights Department. In this quote, we can see that the respondent reported an act of hate to law enforcement. However, the person that they spoke with told them, "Oh, there's nothing more we can do." They said, "I'm not sure what the police could have done, but I was expecting more than just, sorry this happened to you, but we can't help you." And then in this quote, some respondents who were interviewed chose not to report the hate act to police. And so here we see in the quote, the respondent explained that they didn't want to report what happened to them because they were not physically harmed and thus did not expect that much would have happened in response to the report. And so you can see that there's definitely some room to improve law enforcement responses to hate. And so as one of the ways to do this, the commission worked with members of community-based organizations and California's Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, POST, to develop a short video to inform law enforcement officers of the new requirements of AB 449, as well as convey information about hate crimes and incidents to enhance law enforcement responses to hate. And the video featured stories from 3 victims of hate who are pictured here and who graciously shared their stories. There were 3 different scenarios, one in which law enforcement responded adequately, one in which there was an inadequate response, and one in which there was an improvement to an inadequate response that law enforcement provided after input from community members who banded together and reported that they experienced similar things. And the video, kind of above all, shows the impact that law enforcement responses can have for victims of hate. And one of the main takeaways from the training is to underscore the importance of providing victims with additional resources outside law enforcement. So even when the reported act of hate might not have been a crime and thus maybe not prosecutable as a crime, as a hate incident, resources were still provided. There was still something done, a next step. And you can view the 10-minute video on YouTube. You can just look up the 10-minute video, AB 449. There's also the link up here, or you could scan the QR code to go right to the video. And so I'll close with this quote from a respondent. So for this respondent, the resources provided by law enforcement were noted. The really cool thing was the police officer who showed up, he actually handed me a card for counseling in response to the act of hate they experienced, which was a physical assault. And so culminating from this, we put together a list of recommendations. You can see some of them here on the slide. They're also in our report. But we know that law enforcement is just one response to hate. Many communities don't feel safe or are unable to report to law enforcement. In addition, acts of hate that are not crimes cause harm to people and communities, and they need responses. So the Commission has created resources to help policymakers and communities better understand how hate is impacting their communities and what can be done about it. And my colleague here, Dr. Adrian Bakong, will share about one of those resources to further understand hate in California beyond just law enforcement reports.
Thank you, Dr. Goodsell. So law enforcement data are really only act as the official data set on hate crimes. However, national estimates suggest that law enforcement data only capture about 3% of the actual hate crime victimizations, or about 1 in 31 hate crime victimizations. As mentioned by my colleague, Dr. Goodsell, earlier, there's a mixed reception with respect to following a hate victim's encounter with law enforcement. Some people may have positive interactions, but others may feel hesitant to report to police. Additionally, one of the issues with law enforcement data is it doesn't capture other important information, such as the number of people who are impacted by non-criminal hate acts, the impacts of hate on all Californians, as well as the resources that they need in order to get help following a hate act. So to address these gaps, the Civil Rights Department has partnered with the UCLA Center for Health Policy Research since 2023 to better understand the burden of hate acts, which include both criminal and non-criminal hate acts, using the California Health Interview Survey, also known as the CHIS. So what you see right here on the screen is really just the homepage. This is easily accessible to everybody as long as you just make an account. Again, the CHIS itself is an annual survey of 20,000 households in California, and estimates in CHIS are really meant to be representative of all Californians. So hoping to capture both people who do report to police and people who don't report to police, including those criminal hate acts as well as non-criminal hate acts. The questions were created in partnership with the Center for Health Policy Research and were asked of both teens and adults. Again, CHIS data are easily accessible via the UCLA Center for Health Policy Research website or just by Googling Ask CHIS. And after creating an account, you can easily use these data to ask multiple questions about the health, well-being, and experiences of hate among Californians. Now, there's a number of different questions you can ask. If we can go to the next slide, please. In terms of those questions, these are just a sample of the types of questions that you can ask. Specifically, you can ask questions like, how many people have experienced an act of hate in your area? What are some of the types of common biases behind these hate acts? So are they related to race and ethnicity? Are they due to religion? Are they due to disability? And also you can ask questions about what are those types of resources that individuals need following a hate act. In addition to these questions, there's multiple different questions you can ask on the Ask CHIS website, but today I'll highlight 3 key things that we can take away from the Ask CHIS data. If we can go to the next slide, please. Now, with respect to actually accessing the Ask CHIS dashboard, it's very, very simple. This is just a screenshot of essentially how simple it is in order to access the website. So you can choose based on your geographic area, the specific topic. So in this case, if you're interested in hate acts and hate crimes, you can go to the hate incidents page. You can compare topics, so you can compare across different sociodemographic groups. You can limit the population in terms of if you want to just look specifically among adolescents or adults or certain race and ethnic groups, as well as look at specific years. Now, again, our partnership with the UCLA Center for Health Policy Research has been going on since 2023. So there's only 2 years worth of data, but we're hoping that we can continue this partnership throughout time. So let's take a look at one of these questions. If we can go to the next slide, please. So one of the key things we want to know is really, in the past 12 months, how many people experience hate in California? And we can see here that 3 million individuals experience an act of hate. Now, this includes both hate crimes as well as non-criminal hate acts in California. That is about 1 in 10 Californian adults and teens have experienced hate in California. Again, very simple question that you can just look up using Ask CHIS. If you can go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, again, one of the interesting things about CHIS is that we can do comparisons across counties. So you can see on the far right-hand side here, if we can click next, please. We can see that, again, we have that number. 3 million Californians have experienced an act of hate in the past 12 months. Again, 9.4%. But if we ask ourselves, well, how many people experience an act of hate here in the San Francisco Bay Area? So here I just outlined the number of people estimated to experience an act of hate in Santa Clara County, Alameda County, San Francisco, San Mateo. And you can see that there are certain counties where there's actually more hate being experienced. compared to the California average. In this case, you can see that San Francisco, 12.8% of people living in San Francisco have experienced an act of hate. You can see that it's also particularly higher among people living in Alameda County, but lower among people living in San Mateo County. Next slide, please. What we can also take a look at as well is are the main bias motivations. So why did individuals feel like they were experiencing a hate act? We can see here, if we could click next, please. We can see that the most endorsed reason is due to race and skin color. 42% of individuals who experienced a hate act believe that the reason they experienced that hate act was because of race and skin color. And this kind of tracks a little bit with respect to hate crime data, where we see that in terms of hate crime data, anti-Black hate crimes are the highest among a lot by race and ethnic group. You can see as well, if we can click the next slide, please, we can see that ancestry, national origin, or language is a very common reason why people experience hate acts. And next slide, please. We can also see that being discriminated against or experiencing a hate act based off of sexual orientation or gender identity is also a very, very common reason why people experience hate acts here in California. Next slide, please. And finally, one of the interesting things we can examine as well are ask ourselves, what are those additional supports that people need? So this is really important, especially for those folks who are in community organizations, community groups, to really understand what are those things that we can serve to our Californian individuals who experience hate. And we can see overwhelmingly the most popular support that's needed following hate act is, in this case, counseling, therapy, or other mental health support. Next slide, please. And then in addition to that, the second most common one, next slide, please, is really protection for physical safety. So it's not just the mental health support that's needed, right, following a hate act and the trauma that occurs, but more importantly, how can I become safe? How can I keep myself safe? And we've already seen, based off Dr. Goodsell's presentation, that yes, people experience hate, but sometimes law enforcement isn't available to help, or it doesn't count technically as a hate crime. And next slide, please. And finally, help and working with law enforcement also tends to be a particular issue among Californians. So again, how are we bridging that gap between people who experience an act of hate and the resources that they need following a hate act? Next slide, please. And again, these data, the California Health Interview Survey data, AskCHIS, they're easily available via the AskCHIS website. I just provide a QR code if you would like to analyze the data themselves. In addition to that, you do have to make an account, but again, you can just make an account via email to use the AskCHIS dashboard. Next slide, please. And finally, with respect to thinking about these data, in addition to making these data publicly available, we also provide highlights of the data in our annual report, ultimately leading to this key recommendation is that, again, while hate crime data are limited, we ultimately want to establish an ongoing funding stream to allow for a comprehensive accounting for hate. Again, these data are temporary, and we've only procured funding to allow us to track the nature of hate statewide until 2031. Unfortunately, we do not have a permanent infrastructure to allow us to collect these data over time and perpetually. But again, the hope is that we can really create a system where California is leading the way to understand the nature and state of hate. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, Dr. Bakan. So I'll be discussing the Commission's third primary goal, which is to develop evidence-based recommendations for reducing hate. And I'll be focusing in on two areas, which is hate prevention in K-12 schools and public messaging as a tool for preventing hate. In our last report, we actually covered quite a few areas. So in addition to these, if you do go to the report, we talk about addressing politically related hate, interventions to address the mental health impacts of hate, addressing online hate. And so in addition to these two, you can find quite a bit more information about guidance in the report. Our recommendations are grounded in in-depth reviews of relevant literature. In some cases, we also do primary research ourselves, or we partner with relevant institutions such as UCLA or UC Berkeley to provide research that way as well. And we also have printouts over at the resource table in the back of the guidance that we're providing for these two areas, both the hate prevention K-12 schools and public messaging as a tool for preventing hate. Next slide, please. So why focus on schools? Well, we know this is where teens typically experience hate. Basically, about 12% percent of teens in California have experienced hate at school, and about 1 in 4 say that they have witnessed hate while at school. This is over the past 12-month period. And so we know this is impacting quite a few young people. And teachers are typically kind of at the front lines of understanding how children are actually being either engaging with or experiencing forms of hateful ideology. And so understanding how teachers can potentially be a source of preventing that ideology from being internalized by students is another clear reason why we want to focus on schools as an area to prevent hate. And next slide, please. And so broadly speaking, our kind of school recommendations really focus in on improving the overall school climate of schools by applying a more comprehensive, multi-level approach. In part, this approach kind of follows the work of Dr. Ron Avi Astor, who came to a recent commission meeting and shared his years of work in this area. And what he kind of liked it to was this idea of moving from this kind of add-on wall AC unit approach where we're just kind of tacking on interventions to a school versus actually taking a much more holistic approach where we're thinking about the entirety of the community and not just the school as a singularity thing. And so kind of think of it as an HVAC system moving away from just that wall unit where no one's really talking to each other. So to get a little bit more granular with it, we do have some very specific recommendations in the report. I won't go through all of them, but I did want to highlight at least the two that typically we see as really being critical for this area. One is designing solutions that really focus in on what are the local needs of the community versus, we don't see this as a one-size-fits-all approach to preventing hate in schools, that we need to really understand what are the needs of the specific communities. And secondly, being able to gather and analyze data to make sure that whatever goals you're setting for yourself, you're actually reaching those goals. And so in addition to all the other ones, that would be great, but if you can start there, we do think that can make a huge difference. Next slide, please. All right, so the second one, why focus on public messaging? And if you haven't already, might be a good time to pick up one of the one of the papers with the resources on it. We're actually going to have a little bit of an interactive activity coming up that will be needed for that. So if you don't have a sheet, there are some at the resource table in the back. But why focus on public messaging? One is we know that raising awareness of kind of how social norms work in a community can be a great way of increasing the awareness of people's understanding of how social norms can prevent hate. So a person's thoughts and behaviors are strongly guided by the perception of what behaviors are common and deemed appropriate within the broader community setting. We actually had one formative study that showed that people's reported levels of prejudice towards a given group were strongly correlated with community norms of how acceptable it was to actually hold prejudice against that group. And so understanding how the community sees anti-hate initiatives as something that's imperative to that community, if you can promote that as a social norm, it's a great way to prevent hate. Next slide, please. And so here's that full list of the recommendations we have in this area. And the one's a little bit jargony, so I just wanted to take a moment to kind of point out what we're talking about there, this aligned, descriptive, and injunctive norms. Well, the descriptive norm is just the typical behavior that you see around you. What are other people doing in a very specific situation? Whereas an injunctive norm is, what do people expect me to do in a situation? And so if we can align those two types of norms and say, other people are not doing this behavior and is expected of you to not do this behavior, then we're aligning those two norms together, and people can see that this is important to my community, that these are the norms of the community that I should be following. So lastly, what we want to do is using this list of guidance for a public message, show you an example of a PSA that came out a few years back, kind of at the height of the pandemic, and give you an opportunity to give us some feedback on what do you think they did well in this PSA? Are they following some of these guidelines? Are they there? Are they not there? Are there other things that you think may actually be helpful to include in these types of messages to make sure that they are impactful and effective? So the next slide will show the PSA and kind of follow along as you're watching it to see what's showing up on that list and what's not.
I've heard people make comments like, Thanks for bringing the virus over.
Didn't it come from you guys?
A passenger told me that I should go back to China.
I've had strangers cough at me.
People move away from me.
Someone spit 3 times towards my direction. I felt so violated. My biggest fear is that all the stereotypes that we've worked so hard to break are just going to be reversed. And I won't let that happen.
Everyone has to keep everyone else safe. We all have to play our part.
I've been spending 8 to 10 hours a day making masks.
I donate my plasma.
As an essential worker, I'm delivering food, groceries for my community.
I mean, I know I'm putting myself at a little extra risk. I'm happy to do it.
It's really hard to talk about racism when all I want to do is cry about it.
You have to talk about it to other people. You have to tell them these things exist.
We're all human.
I'm a firefighter, not a virus.
I'm a mask maker, not a virus.
I'm a nurse, not a virus.
I'm a delivery woman.
I'm a rideshare driver.
I'm a chef, a neighbor,
Artist.
Bus driver.
I'm a doctor.
Fight the virus. Fight the virus.
All right, so next slide. So we have another QR code for you. And if you click on that QR code, it'll take you to a page where you can actually post some comments for us to share out. And then share out this, again, what do you see that's there on that list? Are there other things that potentially are on the list but not in the PSA that we just watched? Just kind of, yeah, what did they do well? What might be some areas of improvement based on what you saw with that PSA? And we'll give you a minute or so to think about it and post. We'll give you a chance to call out in the room. So if you have something to say, we can call on you, give you the mic if you want to share out. No? You want to write? No, it looks fine. Okay. Yeah, using the QR code if you do have a smartphone. Okay.
Anyone that prefers to write on the postcard, I have
And we'll give you about 30 more seconds to wrap up.
Okay, so as we wrap up the first question, so again, the first question was specifically taking a look at which guiding principles were present. So in terms of taking a look at some of the responses, we have some folks who mentioned framing norms as working together, significant focus on encouraging empathy and encouraging people to share their perspectives. Other folks have mentioned as well centering those who have a story to share, normalizing collectivism and humanization. Initial focus on describing acts of hate might inadvertently send a message that is common and acceptable. Some folks emphasize that the PSA focused on empathy, and especially these are people that we know and people that we interact with on a daily basis as well.
for the second question. So the second question, which guidelines could have been either better incorporated or just weren't incorporated at all? So far we have highlighting relationships across group lines as something that they could have done a bit more in that PSA. Anyone who wrote down their response have anything to add to that? Either from what was there or what was not there. I have one more come on, including more identities. They won't hear you on Zoom.
I know. I'm not a large person with not a large voice. What I liked about the video is that it didn't use the C word. Sometimes people define hate with, it has to be attached to a derogatory term, the N word or the C word. And go back to where you come from is such a common theme with Asian Americans. And this is what I had a question for Dr. Bakan about that survey. Did you define hate in all of its various forms? Because like with Asian Americans, people will pull up the corners of their eyes to say this is what chinks look like, right? And so it never played to the obvious. And so I really enjoyed that, and that it had all these different examples without using the N word or the C word or any other racially derogatory term, because it's a lot more subtle these days. So I really appreciated that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more feedback in the room before we move on? Yeah.
Hi, sorry. I know this would be probably a different video, but I'd be curious to see a kind of ad that would encourage ways to hold people who are perpetrators of hate acts accountable, because I think this video is showing how the brunt of work when it comes to bouncing back, like enacting resilience, is on the survivors. Like they're the ones who have been received hate acts, but they are the ones also responsible for their own resilience. My curiosity would be trying to find a way to really hold the perpetrator to account without necessarily punitive like punishment, because sometimes that's not the best way to break through to people who say certain things or behave certain ways. Putting them in a punishment is not always the best way to make sure that they understand what they did wrong and how they can do better in the future. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. That's a great point.
So I'm the person that put including more identities, and I think it's because I'm thinking of our current times. I know this is reflecting the pandemic, but I think it would have been nice, in addition to Asian, I also wanted to see mixed race. You know, my kids are mixed race, and I feel like that piece is something I'm really worried about. And to add on, bump up what that person just said, maybe showing a narrative of someone who has actually changed their mind, who used to be hateful. They had a turn of experience or something, and then they show that it, you know, you show your own compassion and forgiveness for yourself. It could be a spiritual one, or it could just be like, well, I just figured, you know, I met somebody who was in my neighborhood who actually had this identity, and I realized I was wrong. You know, kind of like Obama was like against gay marriage, and then he's like, well, I had staffers who were like totally for it, and they were great people, so I changed my mind. Like, to me, that's a beautiful story. So.
What I liked about the first video was that there was a lot of conviction there and a very strong unifying message. And I would like to have seen, maybe I missed it, an opportunity to learn more. So maybe at the end there could have been something like, learn more, go here, you know, to navigate them. So that education component, because I definitely wanted to learn more and go deeper.
wanted to build up on your comment because I wrote a comment about like direct action. And as outreach staff, a coordinator, a lot of the hate that I've witnessed or intervened, they are linked with unmet needs, whether it was housing conflict, whether it was a homeless encampment and businesses, and these hate spur out. And I would love to see a scenario, right? And 211 has all these linkage. And when I'm out there on the field, I'm like, did you know if 311, you can call a social worker to come out and respond too? Because they kept complaining about police not coming out, right? Well, it's not immediate. Only like the pizza store is reporting. Well, if it's one person, then it's a personal issue. Let's all report, right? So I definitely see that action, and it could be in 2 to 3 minutes of what 211 call can look like. And I love the part of the video, it's like unmasking. We should definitely build upon the imagery of the unmasking that Stop Hate kind of came from. And I speak from direct experience in working on the ground with different levels of community, talking about the changes of from perpetrator to someone who's receptive. I work with someone who had housing needs. He didn't trust me until I showed evidence, right? And getting those voices of people in the community, like linkage to the stories too. That would be so cool. Sorry, that's it.
I actually have a story that I will share later about, and I think it's a success story, but something along the lines that you guys have all talked about. So I'll be sharing a story soon.
Any other comments in the room before we move on? Thank you so much for all that community insight. Oh, there's one more in the back.
Just to have like a list like this that we can measure that against. Again, thank you for developing these lists because they're really helpful to all of us out in communities, refining our messaging.
And thank you all for your comments and it makes our job easier knowing what to put in these messages. So again, thank you guys for just speaking up. And I'd like to thank the CRD staff for their presentation today. We've mentioned a few of our recommendations, such as requiring training of law enforcement, establishing ongoing funding for data on hate, and recommendations for preventing hate in schools. But this is just a small fraction of the guidance and recommendations we've provided. The Commission has issued 42 recommendations so far, and we encourage you to learn about them on our website. We encourage you to draw on these resources to help you with your work. Let us know if we can help. We also encourage you to attend a community forum, a public meeting such as this one. Our commission, we hold 4 community forums a year, and we go through all out different parts of the state of California. So if you're interested in us coming to your community, please reach out to us. We would love to do so. We may also provide feedback to the Commission. Tell us your ideas for areas you think we should explore, or provide feedback on what you've done so far. We are a public body that is set up to serve the public. You can reach out with ideas, feedback, or if you have any questions or need guidance at csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. Thank you. And again, like a lot of the participants were talking about, you'd like to hear some stories. I wanted to share a story, and I've been given permission to share a story from somebody in my community. Again, I'm the chairwoman of the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. We are located in El Dorado County. Not that long ago, I had a community member come to me saying that she felt like she was, there was some hate. She felt like there was some hate that was directed towards her. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know where to go. And I had a lot of these posters that you see all over the walls in my community. I've been putting them up, promoting California versus hate. And she came to me wanting to know what to do. You know, she felt like she was being discriminative. She went to go buy a car. So I'm going to get into the story. She went to go buy a car at our local dealership, okay? It was a Hyundai car. She was kind of talking back and forth with the gentleman about purchasing it. So she went home, talked to her husband about purchasing it, had a phone call with the gentleman at the Hyundai dealership. They were negotiating some prices, settling on some prices. She told him, well, I want a tow hitch, all this kind of extra stuff that she wanted. Gentleman said, okay, we could do this. They then hung up the phone, or what he thought he hung up the phone on her. He did not hang up the phone. In fact, he was still on the line, and she was on the line listening to him making racial comments and basically saying, oh, what is she going to pay for this, with acorns and feathers? It was very derogatory. She was very upset by it. I'm very upset just telling it, because again, it's just all these things that, you don't hear. If she wasn't on the line, if she didn't hang up at that moment, she wouldn't have heard that. So she heard it, and she actually recorded it. So she came to me and she's like, what do I do? And I told her, you know what, this is what you're going to do. Call California versus Hate. I gave her the resource online. She called them, and they connected her to all of these local support groups. They even got back to her. And I mean, in my community, a lot of our communities don't want to report, a lot of generational trauma, and they don't trust that they're going to get heard, that anything's going to happen. And so I told her, do it, they're going to follow up. And sure enough, they followed up. They called her back. They gave her supportive services, and they followed through to where they went to this organization and they filed charges on this organization. So much so that this organization was found to be in violation of civil rights, and they were made to come into my community to learn about our community. And again, it wasn't punitive. They didn't get like a fine or anything, but it was, no, you need to come in, learn about our community, learn why we are who we are, and respect us. So it was very and at first we were kind of like, do we want these people in our community? But no, we do. We want to teach them, and we want to educate them on why we do what we do and why those words were so hurtful. And so I just wanted to share that story, because that organization did come in. They brought in their whole HR team, which I thought was really awesome. And my community held educational about our history, the trauma, the resilience of my people, what California had done to our Native communities. And I thought it was so uplifting and so eye-opening, and I think a lot of that staff walked away knowing and were like, thank you so much for doing this. Now I understand what those words mean and how they hurt. So again, I just wanted to share that story, because I think with a lot of you guys, what you say, I think I always like to hear those success stories, stories that work, and share those things, because again, a lot of us and a lot of our communities, we are very we're traumatized by law enforcement, and we're scared to report. But please do so, because it does work. It does work, and I really want to uplift this California versus Hate hotline. It does work. They connect you to all of the support services, and they even follow through with her, just checking on her well-being, her mental state. So again, please reach out to California versus Hate, share the hotline. And I know, a lot of times we don't hear about all these great resources. We don't hear a lot about it, all of them. But, by word of mouth and, all of these great organizations that are here, like-minded individuals like all of us here, we can do that. So again, just want to uplift California versus Hate resource hotline. And thank you guys all so much for being here. And I think there's a question right over here. I think so. I think that's the best way through our the CRD hotline. I'm sorry, the website. Excuse me, the email. And I believe the email's up. It's up on the screen now. So again, those are success stories, but again, less punitive and more like, educating them. And I think that's all it really is. It's educating people so they know what the right words to say and the right words not to say, right? So thank you guys so much. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Commissioner Roybal.
Thank you, Commissioner Cuellar. And again, the number for California versus Hate is just above us, 833-8 no hate. You can also go to the website, caversushate.com.org. What is it? .org. .org. So please check out the resources that are available there. We're now going to move into public comment. This is an official public meeting of the commission, and as a result, we will have public comment. This is a chance for you to make a comment about any of the things that you've heard today. related to the presentation by the commission staff or for you to ask questions. We have multiple ways for folks to give public comment. If you are attending the summit today and here in the room, you may deliver a verbal public comment. Please limit your comment to 1 minute. We will time you and I will give you a 30-second and time's up. If you require translation or accommodation, we will grant additional time. Anyone can submit a written public comment by emailing the email that we've talked about before, csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. And if you submit an email public comment, we may read it aloud during the meeting today. If you are joining us on Zoom, we will go to Zoom if you have a public comment. But we will begin today with people with us in the room and then move on to written and Zoom public comment. Is there any public comment in the room here today? Yes. We'll bring you a microphone. 1 second. You have 1 minute. Welcome.
Thank you for being here and thank you for inviting me today. I really have learned a lot. But what I want to say to y'all as the commissioners of Stop Hating, it's a lot of this going on here in San Francisco. It's happening in our schools, in our workplace, within city departments. They are using their jobs to weaponize community members, and I don't think that should be fair. You can't say you helping the people and then you weaponizing them at the same time because of the position, and that is really, really bad here in San Francisco. As you know, it's a beautiful place, but it's a lot of division here, and that's why I showed up today so that I can network with you all to see how we can keep reporting things out to y'all, because people is out here suffering in this city. Asians, black, whites, we all suffering because we up under some attack, and we just need y'all to make sure we keep our mental health together.
Thank you for your comment. Are there other public comments in the room? Right here in the front. Thank you. Have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to, for your consideration, think about capturing risk assessment data among providers and potential victims and survivors of hate. For example, this morning I had the unfortunate circumstance of walking past an older gentleman using the hard R and having a long not weapon, but it looked like a long wooden stick, and that was on my way to this venue. He was repeatedly using the word, and despite all of my training as part of an organization providing services, I assessed my risk and I opted to not engage in such things. I walked by, but it does make me wonder if there's a good way to capture, survey providers to see how is that feeling common among us, and what are ways that we can build our own confidence and build in a group confidence on addressing such things, so we're not just allowing those types of behaviors to go on even when there's very few people or it's out of sight.
Thank you for your comment. Is the comment over here?
Hello, Marus Dumalaog. Appreciative of all the resources that were shared earlier about what Californians need. I was curious, under the line item of protection for physical safety, if there's been any data as to what possible options are available for protection for physical safety outside of law enforcement, just to kind of name sort of what that is. And I know that in the context of this meeting, a lot of things have been talking about hate. That's become the common sort of phrase, and love has been sort of like the controversial. So I'm curious if we can make love the more common phrase in any of this as we address it. I know it might be oversimplified or it might be too soft, but I hope that that could be sort of the center point moving forward.
Thank you for your comment. I will point out that you'll notice that all of the California versus hate materials that you've seen throughout the days are really positive and joyous, and that is done by intention and by design. So that it's not just about what you talked about. Is there any other public comment in the room? We'll have one here, and then one here in the middle, and then a couple over here. Right behind you. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. I would like to propose the collection of data and any recommended resources for nonprofits that serve protected classes, particularly those that serve communities of color, the LGBTQ community, because those communities are obviously under intense scrutiny and under attack. And at this time, as nonprofits, there is a huge risk in terms of how you talk about yourselves, how you reach your community, and how you gather. There's an increase in cyberbullying, increase in well-funded entities that are going after you if you provide grants and funding. So if that
30
could
seconds.
be a part of your work, I'd be so grateful.
Thank you for your comment. Right here in the middle.
My name is Wanda. I'm here on behalf of the Hands Off Students CSUN Coalition. One recommendation or consideration is exploration on law enforcement activity on campus. As students raise their voice, there are students being arrested and the demographics of those students impacted. Say, for example, at CSUN, we have 6 in total, but the majority are Black students.
30 seconds.
That is a BSI, a Black serving institution, say, for example. In addition, I would love exploration upon sports. How does this policy look like for sports, specifically baseball, all of that, in terms of helping students to speak up when there might be scholarships or getting in the way of what it means to fear retaliation and preserving their future? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Right here in the front. Oh.
I don't necessarily.
Go ahead. Right here. Right here in the front. You have 1 minute.
All right. I've been heading research with ACOM, who's been working with you guys to get media fellows to report on what it looks like to access this stuff in their own communities. I remember when this initiative was going to be sunsetted in 2027, these same media reported heavily on, what I guess it would look like without this support, and it was successful enough that, Newsom extended the program into 2031. So I'd encourage you guys to work with us again once in however many years, as we near 2031 to try to preserve this.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment and support. Right here. Welcome. You have 1 minute.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to know what's available for organized harassment in housing settings that are designed to displace protected individuals, where the hate is actively normalized in communities. I think activist nonprofits, city councils, boards of supervisors, legal aid, as well as frontline workers in these organizations should be more aware of California versus hate.
30 seconds.
I will just add that none of the organizations that I've been reaching out to over the past 2 years have directed me to California versus hate, and it sounds like this is the kind of support that people need.
Thank you for your comment.
And thank you.
Right behind, right here. Let's stay in the middle. Right. And then we'll go over to the other side. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Janice Lee. I work at the Coalition for Community Safety and Justice. We have received city and county of San Francisco and state funds to combat hate here in San Francisco. It's amazing to see the investment of resources the state has put into combating hate across the state, whether it's, the creation of the State versus Hate hotline, this report, the data collection, the investment in these meetings that you're holding. This is incredible. Truly, to be able to sustain these efforts and to build resiliency within the community, it also requires the same level, if not more, investment into our communities, into the many community-based organizations here who have been doing the work, a lot of us unpaid for decades, for generations. So I know that is likely beyond the purview of your commission, but we need to see that same continued investment into the community so that we can truly combat hate together. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. This side of the room. Welcome. You have 1 minute.
It's kind of a question, and maybe you guys can answer it the next time you have a commission report. I'm interested in maybe the disaggregation of data, and maybe it's already in the report, I haven't seen it, of disabilities and which disabilities are experiencing discrimination, especially those with invisible disabilities. I'm thinking in particular people who are neurodivergent, and they also have different ways of communicating. So recognizing that, making sure your resources are able to be accessible to those people who have those disabilities.
Thank you for your comment. Zelene, are there any Zoom comments? No Zoom comments. Are there any written comments? There's one Zoom comment. Who's taking them off of?
Hello.
You're welcome. You have 1 minute.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Joshua Prudhomme. You mentioned that CRD is focused on using a data-based approach to preventing hate in the state. And also, viewing that data, it seems pretty evident that since the highest incident rates are among Black Californians experiencing intersectional anti-Black hate that are not crimes but violate civil rights laws, such as in employment settings or educational settings, or acts of hate that may not violate the law, I'm wondering, what is CRD doing to create some targeted programming or even targeted videos like the ones we saw during the COVID era to address these evidence-based data supported issues, including speaking to CBOs that specifically work directly with California's Black communities, and also community residents that may not be part of nonprofit community-based organizations. So I guess this is more of an invitation to CRD to work more directly with Black Californians to find out ways in which CRD can better support the needs of Black Californians in addressing anti-Black hate throughout the state that occurs even in relation to other people of color, Black folks, and white folks throughout the state. So addressing that intersectionality piece as well.
Thank you for your comment. Before we move to commissioner discussion, I wanted to see if the commission staff had any further or closing comments.
Yeah, just one quick kind of shout out or look out for the report that's coming for this year. We'll have a section in there that talks about bystander intervention. I know there was a question that talked about kind of risk assessment. So we did a pretty thorough investigation on some of the top kind of bystander intervention programs that are out there, the training programs, and we've summarized those and put together a similar list with recommendations and guidance on how best to kind of engage with those types of programs to hopefully come up with ways that fit with the community for risk assessment.
In addition to that, with respect to this upcoming year's report, we do have a very, very good section about qualitative data and qualitative experiences. So I know there was a question posed earlier about, things about physical safety. So you can learn a little bit more about what Californians are doing to address that issue of physical safety if they can't necessarily go to law enforcement. So there's some interesting findings that we present there and kind of highlight what are the things that people still additionally need outside of those spaces as well.
Thank you, commission staff. We'll now move to commissioner discussion. So if any of my fellow commissioners have any questions, feedback, Commissioner Zafar.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that one of the interesting trends that I've noticed both in this morning's event focusing on joy, and then Commissioner Cuellar's anecdote and story about how they handled a very troubling incident of hate was this dichotomy between, and some of you have brought it up, the gentleman I think who was speaking there brought this up as well, about love. That, I'm a civil rights lawyer, and we have to remember that the system of justice that we are in is a system of justice that is largely centered around retribution. It's centered around punishment. How rare is it for somebody who allegedly commits a crime and may even be convicted of a crime to actually face their accuser and apologize, right? Apologies have power. And the story that my fellow commissioner pointed out was a system not of retribution, but of reconciliation. And it seems like it's not powerful at the outset or when you first see it, but there's a tremendous amount of power in reconciliation, especially long term. So I applaud those of you that keep bringing that up, and encourage my colleagues here on the commission as well to continue that thread and thinking about not just a system of punishment and retribution, but also weaving in elements of reconciliation and building trust that way.
Thank you, Commissioner Zafar. Commissioner Damsky, since I cannot see you, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Commissioner Roybal. Hi, everyone. Sorry I can't be with you there today. I want to take a moment to uplift the tremendous work that our staff has done with these reports that they presented today. We don't often get to hear from them in this manner, and I just want to say congrats on work well done, and thank you for being able to present that to residents of California today. I will save other comments I have about something unrelated for another commission meeting. It's good to see everyone today, even virtually.
Thank you, Commissioner Damsky. Other Commissioner Salcedo. It was a pleasure being on stage with you this morning, Commissioner Salcedo.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who's here. I want to also remind us that your input is very valuable, and I want to encourage for you to also show up to the commission meetings that take place once a month. I believe our next meeting is going to be in June. I would also recommend for you to sign up to the Civil Rights Department website so that you can get notifications when these meetings are happening. We do the work for the people, right? And if we don't know what is happening in your communities, what is happening with you in your work, then we wouldn't be able to do the work that needs to happen. And I want for us to understand that this is collective work, right? We need you to help us, and again, for all of us to ultimately eliminate the hate that our people continue to experience. So I want to appreciate your presence here today, and thank you to the Civil Rights Department staff, and thank you to my fellow commissioners also.
Thank you, Commissioner Salcedo. Any other commissioner? Oh, good, please.
Hi, my name is Annie Lee, and I'm here on behalf of the Vice Chair, Cynthia Che. But I just wanted to thank CRD staff for your wonderful presentation, including the highlight about hate based on real or perceived national origin. I think we cannot talk about hate today in 2026 without acknowledging the larger federal context that we're operating in, including the widespread anti-immigrant rhetoric and hate. And at Stop AAPI Hates, where Sin and I work, we talk about the trifecta of hate. So there is political rhetoric, including from the leaders in our government, and that impacts the policies that our government is pushing out, new laws, new regulations at DHS and Department of Education, Health and Human Services. And then there's the everyday hate acts that people like you and me experience when we're walking on the street. And those three are all connected and they feed each other. And so I just want to acknowledge that for many people who are told that they're not American or should go home or don't belong here, that you do belong here, and that everything is connected. It's not you. It's not you by any means. And so just really grateful for the CRD staff as well as these resources, including California versus Hate.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here for Commissioner Che. Commissioner Suthers, did I see your hand?
No, but I'm glad you called on me. So I'd like to echo Commissioner Salcedo's remarks with regards to the work that's been done and all the people being here. The other thing I did want to say is these incidents do not have to rise to the level of a crime to be reported. In fact, there's a whole category called hate incidents, which we can have a conversation about. And law enforcement agencies in the state are starting to take those reports. Those reports are very important. In fact, if you have enough of those reports that stack up, you may even be able to rise to the level of a crime, which would be including stalking. So I want to just let people know, don't let anything slide. We are in a very different dynamic now. I can say this as someone who grew up in the civil rights era. I thought we had moved forward, and I think things are equally as bad, if not worse, than when I was in the civil rights era. So again, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're part of the solution. And I keep saying this, and I'm going to say it publicly. There are more of us than them. And so please engage in the fight.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. And I assume you would like to make a comment, Chair Levin. So we'll have you wrap up the commissioner discussion. Please welcome our chair, Commissioner Brian Levin.
Thank you so much. I don't have time to thank everybody here. I would like to thank the members of the community and the press, my son being a fledgling journalist. I love ACOM. And the Civil Rights Department, who has done such a beautiful job at a time when we've seen a reversal from some of our partners at the federal level, indeed, many of them. I also want to thank my commissioners, my fellow commissioners, and the staff that have just done a wonderful job, which is why my wife says to me, you're rescued at home by a PhD and you're rescued at work by PhDs. But I just want to say a couple quick things. First, our friends in the Jewish community are having a summit in Sacramento, and so many of them couldn't come here today. So I just wanted to say that we're open for all folks. And I also wanted to just give my condolences in the passing of a Jewish civil rights leader, Abraham Foxman. I also want. Oh, thank you. I also wanted to give a shout out to my friends at the Muslim Public Affairs Council, who are holding a very important summit in Washington with major leaders from State Department, formerly from State Department, and members of government who are speaking out against Islamophobia as well. And if I may, I can't be remiss. Stop AAPI Hate has done just another excellent job with their new report done in conjunction with the National Opinion Research Center, which I will not tell you how many decades I've been relying on them because it would give away my age. But I also wanted to just bootstrap onto something that Annie had said. This is preliminary data I wanted to share with you, hot off the press. FBI prelim, their major numbers are not going to be out. The highest number of hate crimes have occurred in this decade. There's no year in 34 years that is lower than the lowest that have occurred in this decade. And while we're looking at a decline, I think part of that is some of this stuff, which unfortunately we still hear on the streets, is now going on online in a unguardrailed social media landscape. But don't think just because these numbers have gone down a bit off a record just a couple of years ago, look at this. Second highest number of aggravated assaults. And by the way, this also holds for the state of California as well. And with what Amy was saying, and I thought it was so interesting, this is transgender hate crimes across the United States. Look at this. Now, the first few years, they call that reporting effect when we're just starting to do it. But look at this. It's coming at a time when we've seen an explosion of anti-transgender legislation across the country, as well as attacks on the medical community who are trying to treat young people. What else? Anti-Latino hate crime in California. And if you look at the federal stuff, I'm not going to show it, it's the same thing. a record for anti-Latino. And what have we been seeing going on with regard to immigrants? I am also concerned, though, these numbers do not capture it all. That's why the important work that's done by our colleagues here and by CHIS show us the tremendous gap, 90%, 95% between those, and this is crime victims, not counting the incidents that aren't, that don't report. So the no closed door, every door open should be available. Lastly, research out of England has showed that different communities grieve and respond to victimizations differently. So with that, all this comes together. 8 years ago when we were trying to put together this commission, we knew that people weren't reporting. And now we have together such stellar members of the community. There's no hierarchy here. We're all friends. And I want everyone to know that my colleagues here feel the same way. So if there's one thing, please let us know, things that we can do better. But also, your involvement, the community involvement, was stitched into this legislation. We cannot operate without you. So in addition to thanking my friends and colleagues who I know so well, I want to thank members of the community who showed up and the tremendous work that so many of you do in your communities. And just again in closing, my dear colleagues and friends on the commission and on the staff, you make me so proud, every single one of you. So thank you. But report, and I'm going to get into a little trouble because I always, when I go in public, say 83-38 no hate, but I think the way we're supposed to say it is what? 833 no hate. Thank you. And thank you all for coming. And I couldn't be prouder of my friends in the community as well as my friends on the commission and the staff. Thank you so much. There's no wrong door. And I understand that certain communities even have trouble sometimes within their own communities getting certain things out there. We're here for you. And again, thank you, members of the community. Thank you, commission and staff. And if I could give a shout out to Director Kish, who just sits in the back, and he does so much. And Julia, there she is. Thank you so much for all the work. And please continue to report, continue to engage, because in the vacuum, the haters win. So thank you. And thank you.
Thank you, Chair Levin. Commissioner Damsky, I believe you have your hand up. I'll take your comment and then we'll move to our next agenda item.
Thank you, Commissioner Roybal. And those were wonderful comments, Chair Levin. I wanted to highlight something that we've not talked about today, just because it needs to be included in this conversation of hate that is spreading across our state and our country. And that is an exhibit I saw yesterday at a powwow here at Balboa Park in San Diego, highlighting awareness about the plight of missing and murdered Indigenous women and people of other genders as well. They are now referring to them as murdered and missing Indigenous relatives. And in addition to that, also the investigations that have stopped being done on the Indigenous children who have been murdered at boarding schools. So I wanted to mention this because it's really important. It's heartfelt work. I know it's near and dear to one of our commissioners. In fact, one of the chairs of this commission, of this committee that put together today's presentation. So, Commissioner Cuellar, I'm thinking of you and your community as well. And this is something that we should keep our eyes on as a commission moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Damsky. We're now going to move to, before we adjourn, our last item of the agenda, because this is a public meeting. It's public comment on items not on the agenda. We will now move on to item 3, public comment on items not on the agenda. The commission may not discuss or act on any matter raised during the public comment section that is not included on this agenda, except whether to decide to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. So, to that end, do we have any public comment in the room? We have 2. You have 1 minute. I will give you time at 30 seconds.
Thank you. I just based on what people have already discussed so far, I'm just wondering if there's a way in which we can, in the current climate where the Supreme Court has said it's okay to target people based on accent or perceived physical racial characteristics, there are tremendous headwinds in the federal government, our president, that are actually promoting hate. And if there's a way in which the studies can disaggregate the data within
30 seconds.
Asian, Latino, Islamic communities that show that the hate is aimed at their perceived immigration status. When we're talking about denaturalization of people who are already citizens, it seems to me that we need to take the research on ancestry discrimination a step further in the current climate, and that we need to be prepared to discuss this like hate 2.0, because we're reversing any gains made in the last few decades. And so I just think that you guys are poised to be able to do that, and I just wanted to provide that input. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment.
Can I just comment for 1 second?
No, you may not comment on items that are not on the agenda. We have one more public comment over here. You have 1 minute. Thank you. I'll give you a 30-second warning.
I just want to comment and say how uplifting it is to see commissioners that look just like California and Californians, and how beautiful it is and how beautiful you sound. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. See no other public comment in the room. Is there any public comment on Zoom? No public comment on Zoom. Is there any written public comment? No written public comment. So I will now turn it over to Commissioner Cuellar. Thank you for being here and for your public comment. You can ask a process question. These are not my rules.
Yeah, I understand. That's why I want to make sure that I am understanding the process. You said that commissioners can only make suggestions about possible agenda items or something like that?
We can, if there's a public comment
Right.
during this section, the thing we can agenda, if there's something that you could say, we should agenda that for a future public, at another meeting.
So what is the process of that? Do we make a motion or?
No, you just need to say that, and then the chair, who's sitting next to you,
Okay.
puts that on the agenda.
So can I then uplift a couple of items
Sure.
for a future agenda?
Yes.
Thank you. I would love for us to at some point discuss and explore the law enforcement and students in campus along with sports. I also would like to also discuss in some ways what are the possibilities of us including love versus hate. And there was something else that I was going to say. Well, at least those two. I'll
I have
bring it up.
one. I have an additional one, Commissioner Salcedo, which is
Okay.
the comment that was made around the disaggregation of the data around ancestry or immigration status. I think that is a topic we should talk about in the future. So, Chair Levin, if
And
you would make
disabilities,
that
I
and
heard.
disability, if you would make that note as we look at future agenda items. Commissioner Suthers.
And a comment that was made earlier, I'd like to agendize any data we can collect on hate incidents or hate crime in the unhoused community.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. Now back to you, Commissioner Cuellar.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, I would like to thank everybody here who's been presenting, CRD staff and all my commissioners. But again, I want to give a huge thank you to all the participants in the audience, all of you guys who do the work on the ground. We wouldn't be here with all of us here. So thank you guys. I think gives me so much hope to see so many like-minded individuals in the room. And again, we spread more love and less hate. So thank you guys all. And what a great day today. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you all. Adjournment of the meeting at 2:39. Thank you.